October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and while the focus is on making us aware of the issue, it's also about the hard facts, the numbers, the statistics, and those who are on the front lines in that battle.
It's not on the other side of town. It's not in somebody else's backyard.
214th District Court Judge Ina Klein has been handling the domestic probation caseload for a year and a half, and for the last 2.5 months, the 214th has been ground zero for family violence-related cases.
Some of them are misdemeanors that are enhanced to felony because there are prior convictions. Some of them are cases that allege choking and preventing somebody from breathing. Some are aggravated assaults, and we have several murder cases that allege an element of domestic violence.
These are all the pending cases in the 214th District Court. I think there's about 170 pages here.
Erica Matlock and Jared Horton oversee the prosecution of domestic violence cases for the District Attorney's Office.
These are cases that are indicted, they're pre-file cases, they're motions to revoke probation.
And the types of incidents that fall under domestic or family violence are as varied as the people who commit the crimes.
What we're dealing with is stalking, harassment, retaliation, which are kind of like threats that involve domestic violence partners, or intimate partners rather.
What we're talking about mainly is the same victim getting into multiple domestic violence relationships.
Jared Horton is part of the domestic violence prosecution team, calling this repeat pattern the psychology of domestic violence and the cycle.
Statistics show that somebody who's been a victim in the past is likely to be a victim in the future, and to go from abusive relationship to abusive relationship.
Another interesting point here, the Corpus Christi Police Department shared this with us, and it reports that it made 1,114 domestic violence on-scene arrests so far this year. Amazing, huh? Well, tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning, the Purple Door will be hosting a news conference at the American Bank Center talking about their services, including counseling for both victims and domestic violence offenders. 3 News will be there.